Hi guys, Friday Under Your Skin, and we're here on the top of Davao City. Oh, look at that. What a beautiful view. It's a lovely day. What do you think, Salina?
It is. It's pretty nice. We got a nice breeze up here.
Yeah. Cool shade.
Shade. Yeah, you don't want to be in the sun, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I want to start with a brief, very brief tribute. Well, not a tribute, but a shout out or a mention. Because we've dived into music in the past, right? We've covered a lot of our music stuff. Eddie Van Halen died the other day.
Oh, right.
The guitarist for the rock band Van Halen. Just mention, I always liked Van Halen. I thought they had a lot of good rock songs.
Yeah.
And he was a great guitarist.
Yeah.
And he was 65.
It's no age, is it? That's scary.
That's scary. I'm 66.
Yeah.
That's really scary.
I'm 62 and I might meet him. Oh, dear
me. So
I remember seeing him, those guitars shredding the stage and looking like $1 million.
Yeah. Anyways, I just briefly mentioned that.
Sad day.
Sad. R.I.P. Eddie Van Halen.
R.I.P. Yeah.
So, to continue the story, I'd graduated from electronics school and I've moved to Oceanside, California, which is probably the cheapest place to live in North County, San Diego. Most of the jobs are in, especially at that time, in high tech. We're in Sereno Valley, which was near San Diego, the city, and Carlsbad. So Oceanside was next to Carlsbad. Carlsbad's very nice, but it's expensive.
Right. Sounds very German.
Yeah. So I moved into an apartment. I had a girlfriend with me. I only mentioned the apartment because upstairs were two lesbians, and
not in the same apartment.
No,
in the same building.
They lived on the apartment directly above us, and that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But these were classic lesbians, where the one girl was about as butch as you could get.
One was the dominator.
All the short cut hair. Leathers, chains.
Oh my God!
And then the other girl was, very effeminate, very feminine. Always wore dresses and talked in a very sweet voice. I mean, they were quite a crew, but they became friends. They would come down and visit us. The next door, I had a cop. A California Highway Patrol officer lived next door with his girlfriend, Chips.
Yeah.
He lived next door with his girlfriend, and normally I don't like cops, right? Just because of their job.
Yeah.
But this guy, he was a decent guy. He later moved out and he had a house. I don't know whether he bought it or rented it, but over in Vista, and he invited us over a couple times. And so, one and only cop friend I've ever had.
Okay.
And then across from my apartment was a Marine, because Oceanside is home to Camp Pendleton, the huge Marine base, military base.
Right.
And he was stationed out at Camp Pendleton. And so, me being from a military background, we had a little bit in common. So I got along with him and we talked a lot of military stuff.
You gel quite comfortably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although Marines are a little hardcore, the Air Force is kind of the easy life, according to a Marine. But anyways, so there I am, and I start working for Eaton Leonard Corporation as a electronics tech. And Eaton Eaton Leonard was a automated tube bending machinery manufacturer or factory. This was a huge building. They had hundreds of people working for them. And I was assigned to what was called the specials unit. Basically what we did was we would troubleshoot any problems and also bench test the workstations, which is where all the electronics were located that control the machinery.
So you designed like the electronics and
we didn't design, we worked on them. We made sure they worked.
So if it was going to bend a pipe at 45-degree angle, that panel and that gizmo.
So the workstations would have a computer embedded into the station with a keyboard, and all the programming was done ahead of time to command the machinery to do what they wanted, bend the pipes and all this stuff, right? So it's all electronics, and so we were part of a team that would test all this stuff, make sure it worked, and if there were problems, we would fix the problems or tell people how to fix the problems. But this is a big factory. This is the first time I've ever worked in a factory.
Right.
And, you know, other than you're on a time clock, you know, I wasn't doing what a lot of the people in the factory, which is you commonly think of repetitive work that you just do the same thing over and over. Kind of like, you know, auto manufacturing or any manufacturing of washing machines, refrigerators, you name it. There's a lot of people that do it, right?
Yeah.
And
I've only worked in one factory, and that was when I returned from Saudi Arabia. I went and worked for a company. I was a chef in this factory called APV, Aluminum Pots and Vessels in Manor Royal in Crawley, just outside Horsham.
So what, you made pots and pans? That's it?
Oh no, I used to burn the pots and pans for doing the food. So they used to have a staff canteen, and I was working in this. When I came back from Saudi Arabia, it was very, very difficult to get a job in the UK, mainly because they didn't want. They thought you were just after the money, and yeah, you were when you went to Saudi Arabia. But when you had to come home, you had to take a wage hit. So I went and worked in this factory, and I was only there 6 months. Drove me absolutely balmy. I used to start work at 6 o'clock in the morning, finish at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, do 1,500 meals for lunch, do sandwiches and snacks, and then go home, and I used to do this Monday to Friday. God, I was bored. God, it felt like slashing my wrists some days there. It was
these people, other than the team I was on, most of the people there were doing repetitive work. Same thing over and over. Now, some people say they like that because you don't have to think about what you're doing, right? Once you've learned it. Yeah. Because there was a 5-day orientation. They'd bring you in, run you through human resources. Then you would train for 5 days to learn the job.
Right.
And
that sounds like APV with me. We used to get the same menu on Monday, the same menu on Tuesday, the same menu on Wednesday, the same menu on Thursday, every week. So you knew what was going to happen on Monday.
So
Friday was always fish day. Always fish. Oh God.
You know, there is an advantage to working at a big operation like that. You get benefits.
Yeah.
We had, you know, profit sharing. We had a retirement plan, paid holidays, paid sick leave, things like that, which is nice. And the pay was okay. It wasn't great, but it was okay.
Yeah.
And I wasn't doing assembly line work. I didn't like that they would have mandatory overtime because, you know, I discovered that all these companies at that time were working on contracts. So they would pay a penalty if they ran over the time length of the contract.
Right.
So a lot of times management would be busy calculating if they were on time to finish the products by the end of the contract.
Right.
So sometimes they would force overtime. So you'd have to come in on weekends and work. Yeah, you got paid time and a half for it, but still.
Well, that's not what you saved. That's what why you went to work in a factory, was it?
Yeah, and at first I thought, maybe I could advance.
All right.
I didn't. I
didn't
didn't be promoted, right?
Yeah.
And we had a big break room, lunch room, and they would post job openings in different areas of the plant up on a bulletin board,
Right.
and you could look at it and you could apply if a job had opened up. You may or may not get it depending on who else applied, and we'd have periodic safety meetings because they were worried about people getting injured out in the factory.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and people did.
Yeah.
Get your hand caught in a machine or something like that.
Because that part of it for me, when I worked in a factory, we used to have those safety meetings. They used to be an hour a week, and then you used to sign off to make sure you knew how to use all the equipment in the kitchen and everything like that. But it was like every week you would do the same training to make sure that the company complied
Right.
with legislation, because back then the UK, the management weren't responsible for any injuries or deaths on the work floor.
Really?
And then that changed drastically, because it meant that the management weren't pushing health and safety because it was a cost to the business. So they were stripping out the cost, so they didn't care much about health and safety then.
Uh-huh.
So the government changed the law, making the CEO of the company anywhere in the UK liable, criminally and negligently liable in the court of law.
The U.S. has had OSHA, O-H-S-A, Occupational Health and Safety Administration.
Right. Okay.
OSHA, a government agency, they've been around for a long time, and they've been in charge of safety, and they go after companies for accidents and things like that.
Yeah.
So you can get in trouble if people get injured.
Oh
on the
yeah,
job.
I think the thing is, in the UK, I don't think there was nothing that had that amount of force.
Oh.
So the management would look at it and turn around and say, "Oh, it's going to be the local council department is just going to give me a slap on the wrist and give me a £2,000, £3,000 fine." When they made the CEO of the company accountable, that he would end up going to court, all of a sudden, health and safety went from the bottom of the list to the top of the list.
Yeah.
Everybody had to go and do the sign off that they'd had the training. Everybody had to do the paperwork. All the management had to do it, because the CEO, whether back in the UK, whether it was Jerry Robinson from Trust House 40, he was responsible for 33,000 people. And if he didn't turn around and make sure the machinery was looked after properly and the training wasn't done, then he would be liable and he could get prosecuted. And at that time, there was these private insurance companies. We used to call them ambulance chasers. I think after like in America.
Yeah.
If you
Well,
had
those are lawyers.
Yeah.
lawyers looking for customers would be called.
Well, these guys used to live in the hospital, and they used to come down on the ward, and they used to give you a card saying, "Oh, you had an accident."
Yeah.
Give you a card. I specialise in this compensation.
Exactly.
And
Yeah. We had those in the U.S.
Yeah. So, but that's what happened.
But anyways, I knew the contract was ending around the end of the year.
Right.
And everybody, people that had been working there for some time, were telling me, look, there's going to be layoff. They're going to lay off hundreds of people when the contract ends. And you won't get called back until they get another contract, which who knew when that would be, right?
Yeah.
Could be a few weeks, could be months.
That's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah. So I started looking for another job.
Okay.
before I got laid off, because I didn't want to be looking along with everybody else, right?
Because there's going to be hundreds of people.
Exactly. So I was kind of jumping the gun a little bit and trying to find a job before the layoffs started. The pink slips started being handed out.
Right.
I actually applied at Sony.
Okay.
Sony Electronics had a big manufacturing operation in Rancho Bernardo, which was just north of San Diego. It was in North County. It was in on the I-15 corridor, it was called.
Right.
And everybody, not everybody, but I had people telling me, oh, it's a good place to work. Great benefits, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
You know. And at that time, they were manufacturing TVs, Sony TVs at this plant. So I went in and I applied.
Are they the CRT TVs or the plasma?
Plasmas had yet to come out.
Oh, right.
So they were big CRTs. You know, remember Sony always was known for big TVs.
Yeah.
They'd make and they were good TV. XBR, remember the XBR?
Yeah.
So
I never liked the colour. There was always that grey or always that black.
Kind of dull, wasn't it?
Yeah, it looked like.
That's because the bigger the screen got with a CRT, the duller, the flatter the color looked.
Right.
But of course that was all solved when plasma and LCDs came along.
Yeah.
Right? And now OLEDs.
Yeah.
So I applied, and they said, oh yeah, we got an opening. We're interested. They called me back to next week for another interview. I went and met the supervisor. I'm thinking, this looks pretty good.
Yeah.
They called me back a third time. And now I'm taking a tour of the plant. I'm with the supervisor. I'm meeting people working out in on the line. I'm thinking, I'm hired.
You could be the president of Sony now, because you're going all the way around. You're getting the full works.
Man, life is good. I'm doing pretty well here, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to be working for Sony, and nope. I got a letter in the mail a week later saying, thanks, but no thanks.
Right.
I think, wow, what a bummer.
Any reason?
No, just typical,
You did 3 interviews.
Three interviews.
Gave all your time, and you did all the.
And they basically said thanks,
Stressed out
but no
for 3.
thanks, which did not make me happy, to say the least. So I kept looking.
Right.
And finally I found a company called Articon. They were a startup company. They'd only been operating for roughly a year. They were very small. They had 35 people working there.
Right.
And they had yet to make a profit. They were burning through cash, like big time. Whether they were going to survive, whether they were going to start making a profit, I didn't know. But they offered me a job.
Right.
They hired me in the hardware division, which there were only 5 of us working in hardware. The other 30 people all worked in software development. Because what they were doing was they were reconfiguring Sun Microsystems. Remember Sun?
Yeah, that's a big company.
Yeah, they're gone now, but
right.
at one time they were huge.
Yeah.
They were taking Sun Microsystems Unix, called Unix, computers, and making workstations. They would custom build a desk, a workstation, and then they would custom design the software. And they had these 30 software developers, programmers, doing this for them. And then we in the hardware would boot everything up, assemble it, make sure it worked, all this sort of thing. I actually learned a little bit of programming. Fortran.
Okay.
Fortran had been around for a long, long time, from back in the late 50s. Later came COBOL, but I learned some Fortran. It was part of the the school I went to, as part of the final exam, you had to program through assembly language, which is what Fortran used, a traffic light.
Right.
For the final exam, part of the final exam. Now, you may say, what's so hard about a traffic light? It's red, yellow, and green,
Yeah.
right? And you could just put it all on timers, and you don't need a computer to run a traffic light.
Right.
But of course, they're just trying to make it simple, and so they would have varying times. So you were supposed to write a program for a traffic light to vary depending on traffic.
Right.
Whether if it's heavy traffic, then they would speed up the light. Slower traffic, they would slow down. Something like that.
Yeah.
So, you were allowed, I believe it was a week, to come up with this program from scratch. And what a pain in the ass. I mean, tedious. Oh man. I said, I did it. I did it within the week's time. But I said, there's no way in hell I'm going to be a programmer or a code writer.
Right.
Or anything remotely near software. I'm not going to do it.
Maybe that's why they get paid so much money.
Yeah, I think so.
Because they're brain dead.
Holy moly. I mean, it's coding, programming.
Yeah.
It's very tedious. It's very time consuming. Maybe it's different nowadays. Maybe they've speeded it up. They're using, because after Fortran and COBOL came C++, which I heard was much easier to use. They were getting away from assembling the language or assembly language, and what was called compiling.
Right.
Instead of assembling all your code and then running it, you were compiling it, which supposedly is much faster.
Oh, right.
I don't know. I never learned beyond Fortran.
No. Well,
I have no desire to learn beyond Fortran.
You're talking a language I have never got into or have any experience of.
So there I am. I'm on this hardware team for this company, and same thing though is, even though there wasn't a contract, the question was, is this company going to survive? Are they going to start making a profit at some point?
So you're back into that hamster wheel, I call it, that you're running for a job all the time.
Yes. Do I stick it out? I mean, it's a very small company. It could be years before they scale up, and I get...
Are they around now?
They were around up until the 90s, and they got bought by another company.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of the company that bought them, but no. Okay. They actually did scale up a little bit and become slightly successful.
Yeah.
Through the 90s and into the... I don't remember exactly when they got bought out. Late 90s, early 2000s.
Well, I turned around and I was working at this APV, and the head chef there could see that I was bored as a badger's arse, and I was getting no enjoyment out of it. And he said to me one day that there was a job on the internal notice board up at the local hotel, and he said, you need to go there this afternoon. So I had no time to put anything together. I left work at 1:30, rode up to the hotel, which was owned by the same company that was doing the catering at AP&V, a company called Trust House Forte, which was a massive hotel company owned by a guy called Sir Lord Forte. He'd set it up in the 50s at milk bars in London, and it got massive. And I went up there, they interviewed me, and I rode home, and I was like, that went really well, that was crap, that was terrible. And I get a phone call when I get home saying, can you start tomorrow? I was like, huh? What? I thought that was garbage. It didn't go very well, and they offered me a job. I spoke to APV and the guy there, a guy called Gerard, and I said to him, they've offered me the job. He goes, oh great. He goes, you can leave. And he released me from my contract because it was internal company, and I moved up to the Post House Hotel. I was there a year, Had a great time, learned a lot, and there was a head chef there, a guy called Fred Teska. Really, really, really exceptional head chef. Really nice guy. German Austrian, and always used to turn around and go to us, "You effing C's, you don't know how to cook," and he would go off in this like
C's.
Yeah, the female word for the
genitalia. you're being politically correct.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, and he went off the deep end, and he would like have this stick, and he'd beat the hot plate with this stick. It was something like out of some years later. There was this movie by Mel Brooks called The Producers. Well, that German actor in there that used to beat things was a bit like Fred Teska. Very, very scary, very intimidating, but learnt a lot. And within a year, I'd actually been promoted to a head chef, my own hotel, and I moved from Crawley, Gatwick Airport Post House, to the Post House Hotel in Norwich, and that was an experience. What my college taught me, was nothing compared to actually running your own kitchen and the complexities, and that was an uphill struggle. I found that really, really difficult.
So you had other cooks working for you?
Yeah, I had 16 other chefs in the kitchen, but I had to get a GP, do stock count, do weekly accounts, wage bill. None of that was shown to me at college. They taught you how to cook, but they didn't teach you the management side of it. And I had to go through this really, really steep learning curve. And there was a general manager there called David Clark, and he sent me away to Post House Hotel because I'd been away to their cookery schools, and I'd been off to Austria for a finishing school in the 1 year I was at Gatwick. And my cooking skills were exemplary. I was very, 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 very good. My management skills were in the bin. They sucked. I couldn't make money in a kitchen in the first 4 months of me working. But after that, I turned it around, and it took a lot of work and a lot of hard graft. And I was there about 6 years, and I love Norwich. Norwich is a beautiful place. I met my wife there. I got married in 86, 87. And then the hotel...
She was working?
She was working at the hotel. She was working as a waitress, but she also, a bit like Human League, isn't it? Working in a waitress in a cocktail bar.
Yeah,
I remember that. You. Anyway, that's enough of that on the balcony. So I turned around, and we hooked up, and we got married and the hotel went through a very, very complex time. I was invited to do this stockholders meeting in London at the Savoy Hotel, and it was all about the profit and loss of the company and everything. And the company was owned then by a guy called Rocco Forti, and I was down there, and I was doing the food, and there was a shareholders coup at this meeting. This guy called Jerry Robinson actually bought all the shares of Trusthouse 40 from all of its subsidiaries, and he became a key shareholder in about 8 or 9 different companies that were part of Trusthouse 40, and nobody actually saw this. And when they had this shareholders meeting, Rocco Forti owned 45% of the company, or 40% of the company, and Jerry Robinson owned 51% of the overall
stock.
What they called the A grade stock. So the B grade stock, which is what everybody was buying, the A grade, which is the operating and the running, was owned by, because Trusthouse 40 had a cleaning company that he owned. He became predominant in, and food delivery, and a Puritan Maid, which is a food supplier. And he, out of all these 8 or 9 companies that made up THF, he was the majority in all of them. He had a massive, and he kept it very, very quiet. I don't know. Anyway, he stood up in his shareholders meeting at Savoy and said, "I own the company now." And everything went nuts in this room.
He was majority shareholder.
Yeah, and he asked the guy at the board to exit the table, and they had to, because he produced all the documentation. He had all of his legal team there at the stockholders meeting, and you only needed one share, I was told, I believe, to turn around and attend the meeting, and they all had one share, and the legal team was there, and one board of directors all got off, and the other one got on. And
so, what does this mean for you?
Means for me that I went back to the post house, and the food that was actually going to be produced was all going to be bought in, ready made. It was all going to come from a company called Alveston. So
there was cooking involved.
No, it was all take it out of the freezer in these bags. It was already made at a kitchen, so it was predominantly de-skilling. Post house brand lasted about 8 years and went into receivership. However, Trust House 40 merged into this Goliath of a catering company, which is called Compass, and it has its fingers in every pie. And I don't know whether people, I don't know, maybe they don't, maybe they do. But about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, the board chairman, his wife, the son, the daughter's husband, they were all on a holiday, and they were all the key members of the board for Compass, and they were in Australia, and the helicopter they were in went upside down and flew into the bay and wiped out the Compass board. So these 5 people that were in this helicopter were all key shareholders of Compass, and it threw Compass into a downward spiral, because there was nobody. You couldn't turn around and give it to the second in charge. The second in charge was dead. You couldn't give it to the third in charge. The third in charge was dead. You couldn't give it to the fourth in charge. The fourth in charge was dead. And they had to go through all of this balloting system to vote people back in to Compass.
Right.
But that was like 3 years ago. The whole board got wiped out. But I decided to leave, and that was around 87, 88. And I moved to Cornwall, where my wife came from. Her name is Jenny, and I opened a restaurant, an American diner restaurant called Bugsy Malone's American Diner.
That's a very American name.
Yeah, and I was there, and we used to do burgers, ribs, and chilies, and all this Tex-Mex.
American style.
Yeah, but cooked in a coastal town.
Oh.
It was a little bit of a hard couple of years, because there was the work issues, there was me getting married, there was coming to terms with having a wife and looking at starting a family, and all of those things were like whizzing around my head, and it became a crazy time.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I handled it right, or don't know whether I handled it wrong, but I was only married for around 6 years, but that's another story, and we'll come to that one later. But next time I'm going to talk about in Cornwall opening my new business.
I left Articon, not trusting the company to survive. Found a job with a company nearby, another manufacturing, but this company called Validity Corporation. They specialize in defense contracts, and they hired me as a technician, electronics technician. They were making TBOS, which is short for a training setup for the Army's Black Hawk helicopter.
Oh, wow.
They were making basically a duplicate of the cockpit, right?
Yeah.
To train pilots to fly the Black Hawk helicopter.
So you didn't actually get a helicopter, you just got like this.
It was, yeah. Well, I mean, it had to be realistic, right?
Yeah.
So it was pretty much an exact copy of an actual pilot and co-pilot's setup
Yeah.
to fly the helicopter. And they had all these TBOS modules, which were designed to be portable, that you could pick it up and move it, the whole unit, to wherever you wanted. But we were working off of Defense Department blueprints,
Okay.
classified blueprints.
Oh.
Which may be why I can't find any information about the company when I Google it now.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? I can Google any other company I work for and I can find information. But this company, nothing.
Maybe it turned into DARPA.
I don't know, but that's strange. So anyways, I was actually involved not in just testing, but actual assembly, putting it all
Right.
together, doing the wiring, all of this sort of thing. And it was interesting because it's pretty complex.
Yeah.
But I liked it, and at first I liked it. The
So-
boss...
So is that stuff more heavy duty because it's going into war? Or
Yes.
It's going to be in conflict. Somebody could be shooting massive
It's
shells at
only
you.
it's only heavy duty as far as protection. In
Right.
other words, the electronics, the basic principles of how electrical systems work, and all that remains pretty much like it would any other thing.
Right.
But what was called hardening of the systems to protect it in combat, yeah, that existed. You'd have, panels, steel panels that were protected. You'd have special cases and things like that. But this was all broken down in the factory.
Okay.
Other people were responsible for that.
Right.
You were assigned, in fact, when you were hired, you got a piece of paper that was job description. And they would give this to you and they say, read this, study this, make sure you know it, because this is exactly what you do.
Right.
And it was true. That's exactly what you did. You weren't responsible for anything beyond what was on the job description.
Okay.
And because it was sort of like a manufacturing process, right?
Yeah.
Where even though it wasn't on a moving assembly line, where you were repetitively doing the same thing over and over, and it just slowly moved down the factory floor and went to the next station. What I was doing, and I was doing it with 4 or 5 other people doing the exact same thing, we would work on it for maybe 2 or 3 or 4 days. Once we're done, then it got moved into the next station,
Okay.
where other things were done to it.
And this was all classified, top secret.
This was all classified work,
If
because the Black Hawk helicopter at that time was brand new, fairly new.
So
now,
don't,
of course,
don't talk about it outside, otherwise we're going to chop your head off.
CIA may come and pay you a visit.
Yeah.
But so for a while it was interesting, but again we're running into contracts. The Defense Department, they wanted to get this helicopter up and going,
Right.
so they wanted their simulation, flight simulators finished and working, so
Yeah.
they could start training pilots to fly the helicopter.
Right.
So the contract was for a specified time. It had same thing, right, as before. It had to be done, otherwise the company would be paying fines and fees for not finishing on time the contract.
And that contract could end like 31st of October, and then you don't have a job the next day.
Exactly. It's same worry. What's going to happen when
How
the
am I going to pay
contract...
my mortgage?
You're right.
How am I going to drive my
You know.
Yamaha and my beast of a car?
So I'm sitting there with the same dilemma.
Yeah.
What do I do? Do I continue working till the contract ends and hope that they get another contract and they lay me off and hire me back real quick?
Yeah.
Or is it going to be weeks, months, who knows, until they get another contract? Company's not going to tell you. They're not going to tell you shit. They're just going to tell you, Here's your pink slip.
Yeah.
You want to wait around until we
we'll
call you back? Don't call us. Right.
Oh, God, dear me.
So, that's the problem at that time with working in high tech and technology. Most of these companies were either startups and not making a profit yet, so you didn't know if they were going to survive, or they were working for the military on defense contracts, because that's where the money was, right?
So you didn't think about going into the HR office and saying, look, I've got all this technical information about the Black Hawk in my head. I need a job, so I'll trade you. I don't tell anybody for...
For what? Protection? For a job. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Can I be at the top of the list?
No, I was just a flunky. Even management was at risk in layoffs.
Right.
They may be the last guys, white collar, they may be the last to be laid off, but they're going to get laid off too, right? So middle people like me, nah, they don't care. Right?
Yeah.
It's your problem.
Your life.
So I'm faced with this dilemma. What do I do? And you know what? I started thinking, hell, do I keep doing this?
Yeah.
Right? This is what I thought was going to be my career, working in IT. But now that I'm in it and doing this, I'm realizing, this is screwed up. Do I just keep going from company to company,
Job to job,
job to job, working contracts, getting laid off?
it's not easy, is it? When you go and look for a job, it's stressful, it's pressurized, because you're not getting any younger. Don't take that the wrong way. It's like me, when I went to look for jobs as a chef, there were hundreds of people underneath that were pushing for that job. I needed an expectation of a salary. That person would come in and could undercut me by £10,000 a year.
Yeah, well, I wasn't worried so much about that. I wanted a company that I could count on, that I could work for, that I could look for advancement, right? A career, in other words. I didn't want to be bouncing from one company to the next, doing the same thing over and repeating. I was hoping that some company would hire me permanently and I could advance, move up, right? Make more money, do better with benefits. I could count on them, rely on them, but I'm finding out that ain't how it works. At least at that time, it isn't how it works, which kind of sucked. They didn't tell you that in school when you're training to work.
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
IT.
They get you through training, but then they turn around and say, "This is what you're going to have to do every contract."
And I even thought, would it be different if you were programming, right?
Yeah.
If you were software? No, they went through the same basic thing. They were just a little more valuable than we were, but it was the same idea, right? They were expendable.
Right.
If the company's not bringing money in, they're not going to pay people to do no work, right? So you could understand the company's position. But I had to make a decision here. I had to decide to either continue with this and hope that somewhere down the line it improved, or I got lucky with some particular company. Right. What do I do? So in the spur of the moment, because I could see again the contract coming up ending.
So you'd had like 4 companies in the last...
3 companies within a span of about 2-3 years.
And then the Sony escapade.
And the Sony fell through.
Yeah.
Which I had high hopes on that, but it didn't pan out. So I had to decide what to do here. And whether it was the right decision or not, I decided to take a step backwards.
Okay.
For something that was more guaranteed, right?
Right.
More reliable. So I went back to working for Chevrolet.
Chevrolet Avac on the... Oh, Chevrolet Avac.
Yes. Yeah. Big step backwards, but I could make money. It was reliable. I wouldn't get laid off, That was the thinking.
And you could get career advancement.
Yeah, not really.
No? Okay.
No, not really. I mean, working at a car dealership, you're basically in 3 categories:
Right.
sales, service, and parts.
Okay.
And parts, it doesn't take many people to run a parts department.
SSP, statutory sick pay.
Sales, well, everybody knows what sales is. If you're whether you're selling a car or
Yeah, but you got to be good to be selling. I'm bloody
Herbalife, it doesn't matter. Sales is sales.
Yeah.
You can, sure, people make a career out of sales and they make money doing it, but it's hard.
Yeah.
You gotta to be successful. You got to be a good salesman.
Yeah, you got to have waffle.
Yeah.
You've got to be switched on. You've got
Every day.
And your light bulb has got to react really quickly to the conversation you're having.
And service. Well, I was in service. Where do you go in service? Well, you can't. There's the shop foreman. There's the service manager.
And that's it.
That's it. Everybody else is out in the shop doing their thing, repairing the cars. Whatever, this being an American dealership, you could specialize, and mine was 15A.
Yeah.
Electrical, air conditioning, and trim.
So you went back to doing that with Chevrolet?
I went to work for Missley Chevrolet. No, that was previous. What am I saying? Weslow Chevrolet in Carlsbad.
Okay. I've actually gone back to a car dealership. What car were you driving then?
I was still driving my Nissan pickup.
Your Nissan pickup?
But that's about to change.
Oh, there we go.
Because we're taking not necessarily a step backwards, but we're going back to something I had ridden before.
Oh, okay.
So next week I'm going to talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
A new ride.
Lovely.
And
look forward to that.
Also, in a roundabout way, I got back into music.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Playing rock and roll. And I'm going to talk about that next week.
Yeah. I turned around and I moved to Cornwall, and I had a new car. Well, let me put it this way. I bought a new car when I went to Norwich, thinking it was going to be an investment, and it was worth about as much as a plastic bag by the time I went to sell it. And I got a new car when I went to Cornwall, and the worst decision I ever made. So, on buying cars, and put me out of cars. But I'll cover that next week. So
a lot to look forward to.
A lot to look forward to next Friday. So from here, overlooking the Gulf of Davao on a Friday. Take care, guys. From me and
Sirliner.
have a good one.